Shabbat Shalom. I'm Rabbi Robert Barr, and I'm pleased you're joining me and one another for the streaming Shabbat service. This is an opportunity for us to pause, to catch our breath, to think about where we've been and where we're going. So let the Sabbath be a time for believing in what could be and seeing with new eyes. In this serious world, let us take ourselves less seriously. In these harsh times, let us listen for a soothing word. While the world around us unfolds in an instant, let us judge each other a little more slowly. Let the Sabbath shine a light into a corner of ourselves where hope is renewed. Let us remember a reason to be joyful, a way to be gentle. Let the Sabbath be a time for opening up. Let us find strength in our dreams and trust in our strength. Again, I'm Rabbi Robert Barr of Congregation Beth Adam. That's our bricks and mortar congregation here in Loveland, Ohio, part of Greater Cincinnati, and our Jewish community. That's our online initiative that we began 14 years ago. When we first went online, it was unique. Very few institutions were doing it. And people thought we were a little bit crazy, frankly. They didn't quite understand the value of the internet. But slowly it grew, and we were able to connect with people literally around the world. Our Jewish community, our online initiative, allowed people who had maybe perhaps visited Beth Adam to continue to maintain a relationship, members who moved to different cities, or students, and people who may have read about us. So the internet and being online was a great opportunity for us to create community. During the pandemic, of course, it became even more important. And today, even though the pandemic has receded and we're now gathering again at our congregation for services and adult education, we continue to stream services. We recognize the value of this, that you can be a part of this very special community by joining us online. But it's more than the technology that is essential. It's the voice of Judaism that we give expression to here that is most meaningful. It's a bold, dynamic Judaism. It's a Judaism that understands that we're not like our ancestors. We've been shaped by information that they never had. We shouldn't simply repeat their words because they wrote them. We need to create new words, new prayers, new services that reflect who we are, what we believe, and our understandings. And that's what this community has been doing for over 40 years. And because we can stream services, you can be a part of that wherever you are. And I'm delighted you're here sharing the service. Streaming services also means that you can chat. I know people chat all the time. Please leave a message where you're participating from. We always like to know that. Also, it means I can record a service at one time earlier in the day or earlier in a month and bring it into this service like I'm going to do tonight, and I'll explain that in a moment. So I'm glad you're here. I'm glad that we're sharing this Shabbat together. Now we continue the service with the light of the candles. Night seeps up from the ground. Light falls from the stars, distant and icy, ancient, the all who came before. But the light of the Sabbath is warm. The light of the Sabbath is ours. The light of the Sabbath is of this time, of this place, of lives that know the past only in a dream. As we kindle these lights, we create a place of warmth. As we kindle these lights, we welcome this time for reflection. As we kindle these lights, we stake our claim. And while these lights burn, the time is ours. Baruch ha'or ba'olam, blessed is the light within the world. Baruch ha'or ba'adam, blessed is the light within each person. Baruch ha'or b'Shabbat, blessed is the light of the Sabbath. You think I get better at it? It seems I just keep on struggling. There we go. Technology. Sometimes it just doesn't work the way you expect it. Sometimes these lighters aren't just as strong as I had hoped. So now that the Shabbat candles are lit, we're going to continue with a conversation that I was fortunate to have with Reverend Sharon Dittmar. Many of you know Reverend Dittmar. She has participated online with me many times years. She has been here, taught in our bricks and mortar facility at our congregation, Beth Adam. She's done one of our high holiday services once a year. And she and I together led a trip to Israel several years ago, and we're going to be leading another trip to Israel in July of 2024. This is a conversation that I recorded with her a while back, a conversation about how is religion doing in America. So I am pleased that once again, Reverend Sharon Dittmar is joining us for a conversation. Those of you who have been with us for a while, I'm sure have had the great opportunity to hear Reverend Dittmar. We've led a trip to Israel together. We're going to hopefully be leading another one in June or July of 24. She's spoken at our congregation, and we've had conversations online. And so I'm delighted to welcome you this evening. Thanks for being here.
I'm delighted to be here.
Good. And I want to have a conversation with you about how religion is doing in America. For those of you I want everyone to know that you are, is it a regional director? What's your exact title with the Universalist Unitarians?
Wait for it, Bob. It's quite long. I am a congregational life consultant for the Mid-America region of the UUA, and I am the primary contact consultant for 31 UU congregations in 13 states.
Wow. And how do you say that shortly? What's the acronym?
You don't, and that's why I find it hilarious. I'm a congregational consultant. My denomination pays me to consult with our congregations in a certain size range. That's my job.
Great. So to talk about how religion's doing in America is like really in your wheelhouse. And
totally.
Okay. So, and what prompted me, I think what sort of pushed me to when we were talking about topics to discuss was the Super Bowl was a while back now. And there were two big ads for Jesus. I mean, they were ads for Jesus out of a particular group, and they were millions and millions of dollars. I mean, I think $7 million for 30 seconds. And I think one was a minute. It was almost $20 million in ads advertising Jesus. And it got me thinking, why did they need to feel a need to advertise? Is religion doing so badly that they thought that this was a way to get the message out, to engage with Gen Z or Gen X or whatever generation they're trying to reach? I was just curious, what do you think's going on?
Oh, Bob, I would ask another question about those ads.
Well, okay, well, there may be another. There may be a political angle with those ads as well?
Correct. I would ask who's funding them and what is their agenda. That would be the first thing I would ask. And I actually don't think it has to do with COVID or religion in America.
Okay, so you think the ads were political?
Yes,
and
I think. Mm-hmm. Yes,
go ahead.
I do. I think it's probably created by people who are Christian and are very sincere about their faith. But when I watched the two ads, the one about people arguing and the one about children and kind of why can't we get along, I felt like the message conveyed was that if we had that Jesus forgives us for being mean and yelling, and the little children are still innocent, and it's all going to be okay with Jesus if we follow Jesus. And I was like, people are yelling because they're dying in the street, because we have white supremacy culture, because we have nationalism and white nationalism and racism and anti-Semitism and Islamophobia and anti-trans legislation. I was kind of like, I'm glad Jesus might get us according to someone, but how about if people in power get their systemic systems? There's systems that are destroying lives and communities, and I felt like it was an attempt to literally whitewash that. Okay.
And I have to say, I think I agree with you. I think there was an element of politics that were played out under the name of religion, which certainly is not new. People have used religion to do politics a lot. I mean, historically, we've seen it all throughout history. So I agree with you. I think that that's a great observation. I don't know that it changes my question, though. Maybe we shouldn't focus on the ad, but the question is, how do you think religion's doing in America? Do you think religion is capturing the hearts and minds of people, or do you think religion is struggling? And if yes, is it all religions? Is it traditional religions, progressive religions? And why is it missing the mark if it's missing the mark?
Well, in terms of religion struggling, I got to be honest, I don't think we have an answer yet. We are still in a liminal phase. So the anthropological term of the in-between space. So there was religious life in America that I have only lived in America. I can't speak to another country. Before the pandemic, there's what we've been going through in the pandemic, and we're not through the pandemic yet. And so we're still living with the manifestations and ripples of the pandemic. I could tell you demographic trends I've observed.
Right.
What they mean a year from now or 5 years from now, I don't know. And when I hear people telling me they do know, I feel uneasy. I think this is a time for a lot of humility and curiosity and observation without panic, though, literally. So certainly there's been a decrease in attendance in general, particularly amongst families with children. That's a big thing I observe in my denomination, Unitarian Universalism. Can't speak for others. But at the same time, do you know our congregations have been very generous in giving to the UUA?
Really?
We provided a lot of resources during the pandemic and really shifted the work we did. And our congregations have been so generous and kind. And I was one of the people who initially was like, there's going to be financial shortages. And maybe there will. That could well be part of something that's to come. But we're 3 years in and that has not happened at the UUA yet, which is fascinating to me and unexpected.
So people with kids aren't coming back. Are you in when I read like the Pew study, and I talk to folks, certainly Jewish, we talk about the nuns, the NONESs, the people who aren't involved, and people seem to be moving away from religion in America. In certainly when we see it with younger generations, it doesn't seem to be as compelling to them. Is that something that you're experiencing or hearing about?
We were experiencing that beforehand, but again, I'm like, the families haven't returned yet. But something that Unitarian Universalism tends to offer, people tend to come to us for. We offer not only a non-creedal faith, no faith test.
Right.
We offer true curiosity and interest in other people's faiths without a dogmatism that tells you what you must believe in yours or about others. And we also offer a comprehensive sexuality education program called Our Whole Lives, like no other. It is better than what you would get in your public school by far. And often we do it as a joint effort with UU and UCC congregations. And a lot of people come to us those things.
Really?
It's when their kid is told they're 6 and the little child they're sitting to next to them says, well, you're going to go to hell because you don't go to church on Sunday. I mean, honestly, these are the stories that they get. I think they'll come back at some point. What I observe about families is they're exhausted. They're spent. They spend time, money, energy, health. They're like kind of on a thread of energy at the moment. They probably won't always be that way, but right now they're still in hover recover mode.
Wow. Okay. Would you talk a little bit about the sex education, the sexual education materials that you use, and why has the UUA invested so much in that?
Because we feel that to live a fully whole life, we have to integrate and incorporate our own bodies and sexuality, sexual identity, feelings, orientation, thought, all of it. And attempting to divorce ourselves from it causes harm to ourselves and society and our families and communities. And so, the sort of abstinence isn't working, right? And then what do our children see modeled elsewhere or on social media? And we thought, well, let's be serious about doing some really progressive, very intentional, comprehensive sexuality education that's not typed to one sexual orientation or another, that is open and welcoming, and also starts with basics like, what's a friend? How do you know someone's a friend? How do you treat a friend? What's dating? Well, how do you know someone's dating? What's your own body and your own space? How can you keep it secure? And what are the warning signs when someone's not respecting your space? And how do you respect the space of other people? And then what about when you're attracted to people? Like, it moves along a continuum. Wow. And it's an exceptional program. Exceptional.
Wow. It's impressive. And I think it's important. I know we've done sex education here, not nearly as comprehensively as that. I know I've looked at the materials. It really is incredibly impressive. And I would think even more so today, it's even more important because a lot of abstinence-based education, a lot of sex education is being undermined in the public sphere, and the kids aren't getting it, and they really do need it. They need to have a place where this information can be shared. They can learn it. They can have open and honest questioning and answering. That's
so the lore is always that it's kind of like, once your kid goes through our whole lives, their peers are going to come to them like, how do you put on a condom? Like, the lore is like, there's all these myths that children share that may or may not be true. And then when someone goes through our whole lives, they're like, oh, that's not true. There's so many lies about sexuality, sexual identity, sexual expression, gender identity.
Right.
And so really kind of empowering children to, who are you? You don't need to be someone for me. You need to be you for you. Who are you? Right. How do you express you? Who are you as a sexual human?
Do you think there's more, are you getting more pushback now at this particular moment in time in this material? Are you hearing anything as a function of it?
We have always periodically gotten pushback. It never ends. There's always something that happens somewhere. It's continual. I would not say we have more. Honestly, there's always been issues with it, and always people who have been unhappy, but we're a congregation, and you don't have to bring your kids here, and they don't need to learn this.
Right.
And we're not teaching it in public school. And we're very careful about how it's trained and how trainers are trained and how they present the material and the education they need and the support they have. And it's one of the best things we do in Unitarian Universalism. My son went through it, and after he went through it, I kind of felt relieved. Now went through it. There's a main program we have for junior high kids, but we actually have our whole lives programs for kindergarten through adult. And they're going to talk about different things for different ages, right?
Sure.
Kindergartners are really going to be like, how do you know someone's a friend? What's safe touching? That's kindergarten, okay?
Yeah, it's age appropriate. You're teaching age appropriate sex education.
Yes.
I mean, people go, sex education, but there is age appropriate. It's terminology. It's because it's not. I think we tend to when they hear sex education, they talk about people go activities. They don't think about the emotional context in which it takes place. How do you make decisions about intimacy at some point? I'm guessing that decision making is a part of it as the kids get older. How do you know who you want to
It's
share?
huge. And what is like sexual safety, and how do you know? Because so many children are abused. And then they're told what's happening is normal, and it's not normal.
Right.
And so that's like a big interest in it at the start when they're at their youngest, but also going forward too.
And you said you share this with, and you use some initials, but I think people may not note of what those initials refer to. I think you meant United Church of Christ. I think you said you.
Yes, we partner with United Church of Christ on this curriculum. And it's called Our Whole Lives. We abbreviate it as OWL. You could find it online.
But so do you, when you teach it, is it like in a youth group setting, or is it in each?
And it's in the congregational setting. Yes, each congregation. Every once in a while, groups of congregations, like if they're nearby and they don't have a large enough pool alone, they'll do it together. But there's like so many rules, and we're big on following them. Like, you can't adapt the curriculum for your group. There's reasons for everything about the order it's taught. It's over like 3 months. There's like reasons for everything.
And good training. Well, and so this, as I'm listening to this, our conversation is, what's happening with religion in America. This is an incredible use of the religious space to, use religious space to deal with an issue that in sort of the public sphere, and it's been a while because we've been talking about sex education here for a long time, where the public sphere, there's so much politicalization of the issue. The religious space allows for a group of like-minded people to do things that they think are value, particularly around education with their kids. And it's not just the religious stories. I mean, I think sometimes the religious stories are overblown, or they're overdone. We spend so much time teaching ritual and religion, we forget that the religious space can also be a place about values and morals that are incredibly important in decision making.
Absolutely. And one of the things I love about OWL is it's also friendly towards gender identity, gender expression, and all genders. And I mean more than two genders, because there are more than two genders.
Mm-hmm.
And so you could be a child experiencing yourself as non-binary, or identifying as queer and not sure what that means. You could feel asexual for a time. You could have, and we're supportive of all of this, so that we're not forcing kids to be someone they're not. And we're letting them name themselves, right? Like, isn't there something big about naming yourself and who are you?
Right. And this, I want to be clear. This OWL just didn't come into existence the last year or two. I mean, the Unitarians, decades. I mean, really was the Unitarians were really on the cutting edge of dealing with this issue and talking about it before it became part of the mainstream conversation.
Absolutely. Before this, there was a curriculum before this called AYS, about your sexuality. And that's probably at this point, like maybe 30 or 40 years old.
Wow.
Yeah. So we were always really big on this. So I do feel like at some point parents come back for that. I feel like parents are exhausted. What I also see in congregations today is that adults are exhausted. We're actually struggling with volunteerism in our congregations. People are just tired. They're like, I might have slept enough. I think I made dinner. Everyone looks about clean. That's about what we managed today.
Right.
People are
spent. So you're a little bit more skeptical, maybe, which I think is a useful insight, more skeptical about some of the demographic numbers about people's involvement. You don't think they really predict the future. They're just.
I don't think we know yet.
It's like more of a snapshot it's more of a snapshot of where we are at this particular moment. I mean, the Jewish community certainly has struggled. This is a conversation we have a lot about. The unaffiliated is the term, though it's not what it means is people not belonging to congregations. But a Jewish identity allows one to identify as Jewish, both whether at the secular realm or the religious realm, and there's different ways to affirm one's identity. But I think the sense of religion is is attracting less people. My concern is I still see traditional religions having a bigger footprint on sort of moral issues in America. That's my concern always. That somehow they represent authenticity, and the more progressive religious groups don't.
Absolutely. I was curious about what you're saying. Has there been a decreased attendance in, for example, Reform Judaism from before the pandemic to now?
I want to have one conversation just about COVID with you. I know we're going to record one conversation.
We'll do that later.
No, we're going to do that later. So we're going to do a separate conversation. For those of you watching and participating tonight, we're going to have a separate conversation just about how COVID has reshaped congregations. But for quite a while now, the Jewish community, this is a pre-COVID, it has been experiencing a decline in people value in the religious setting. I mean, this has been going on for a while. And how do you engage people in it? Part of my argument is, I think, is doing programming like what you're describing, programming that helps kids become better kids. Is a great religious reason to be involved in a congregation. Places where kids learn to think critically, and understand that there's different ways to hear the same story, that different people can hear the exact same story and they will see it from a different perspective. Certainly when we were in Israel, that was part of our experience. We went, in fact, I recall we went to see a play we went to a playhouse that does workshops, and one of them was about how the Arab and the Jewish community experienced day of what's called independence, which for the Jewish community was exciting. For the Arab community, it was the Akbar. It was the tragedy. I mean, the same moment in time is seen differently by two different people. Hearing a multiplicity of stories is important. So there's value in the religious experience, but I think sometimes people don't see it. And how do we get that message out? It's a challenge. And I know that for me, I find that a lot of people presume that that we live in that traditional world that they've rejected. Mm-hmm. They don't realize there's a way to have a progressive religious experience different than they grew up with. So that's part
so
of it.
Unfortunate.
Yeah, I agree.
Because Beth Adam offers a terrific experience.
Yeah, when you've been
For
here for
adults and
service.
children.
Adults and children,
Yes,
and
it does.
I'm guessing we're one of the few congregations in the country that had a minister give a Rosh Hashanah sermon, and it was brilliant.
Probably true.
So it's great having you. We're going to pull this conversation to an end, and then we're going to have another conversation about how you think COVID has reshaped religious life in America. So thanks for joining us for this conversation, and I hope you join us for our next conversation. I always enjoy my conversations with Reverend Dittmar. Always learn something from her. I hope you learned something as well this evening. I'm glad that she was able to share her time with us. And I know after that conversation, we recorded another one, and I'll be showing that and sharing that with you in the weeks to come. Now we continue our service with the sharing of the wine. We lift the cup together as a tribute to our past, as a blessing for our future. May the allure of its untold flavors beckon us forever to keep uncovering new branches, new roots that hold us together. Tonight, as we welcome the Sabbath, may we find time to spend in our own quiet company and listen to the call of our hearts. Ruchim hachayim ba'olam, blessed is the life within the world. Ruchim hachayim ba'adam, blessed is the life within us. And we say, l'chaim, to life. Well, I'm delighted you were able to share this service with me. If you want to know about upcoming events at Congregation Beth Adam, our streaming services, our Zoom services, our hybrid services, our adult education, the best place to go is bethadam.org. bethadam.org. There you'll find our calendar. You can listen to my podcast. You can look at streaming services from the past. We've got archives there. And you can look and learn more about the congregation. You can go to our About section, or you can read about our approach to theology or approach to liturgy. All that's there. So I'm glad you're here. I hope you continue to join us in the weeks ahead. And we end with the words we end with each week. May we know blessings those who are near. May we know blessings those who are far. May the Sabbath bring its goodness there and soon, wherever they are. May we know blessings today, and may we know blessings through the night. May health be for our children, and all things soon be right. May we know blessings in our comings, and may we know blessings when we depart. May we live each day with peace and wisdom in each heart. Ken Yehi, let it be. Shabbat Shalom.